all set?
I think so.
Okay, so we've determined the quorum. The next thing is amendments to the agenda. So what I propose, if no one has any objections, is that we move item 4B, which is information exchange with residents, to ahead of 4A. So it'd be residents, town officials, and non-residents under the informational exchange. Any objections to that? Seeing none. Acceptance of the minutes?
I actually have an amendment or a
Okay,
proposed
yeah.
thought. Could
I'm
we?
sorry.
No, it's okay. Could we add a discussion of our, I don't know what to say here, like the proposed mitigation for folks impacted by our resource protection ordinance?
Could that just come under the issue of draft ordinance amendments?
Yeah, absolutely.
Because that was part of it.
Oh, okay,
And
yeah.
it's in there.
Absolutely, yep. Yep.
If we could make it last, because we've got a bunch of stuff to get through in a reasonable time today,
Right,
but
right,
yes.
right, yeah.
So we'll do, the completeness review, and then we'll do discussion of draft amendments, starting with housing density. And then if there's time remaining, we'll try to make sure there's time, at least to start the discussion.
We can hit it next time too.
Okay.
It's not really,
Yes, I'd like to do it, so.
yeah.
Okay, any other comments? So we're gonna include that as part of the item 6? Okay, I don't think that needs a vote, so we will just do it. So, Lois, if you would care to step up.
I'll go back to minutes.
Oh, minutes, yes, I get so excited. Do we have a motion on minutes?
I'll make that motion to accept the minutes from November 1st.
Second.
Moved and seconded, any comments? Seeing none, please raise a hand if you approve.
I'm gonna abstain just because I
You
wasn't
weren't
here.
there, okay, 401, they are now.
Thank you. And again, I appreciate the fact that you switched it around a little bit to do this.
You get 3 minutes, so.
Thank you. I'll talk fast like you did when you came to our committee, 16. Not that I was counting. My name is Lois Kilby Chesley. I don't know that I've met some of you, but some of you I do know. I'm a resident of Methodist Corners and around Pond Road. I'm here this evening because I watched with interest as my neighbors have tried to find a solution to the miscalculation of the Durham Resource Protection Map. I've been part of a meeting and feel strongly that the map is based on incorrect and incomplete information. In fact, Jerry Douglas, when I was meeting on another matter, stated that the map is a 30,000-foot approximation of the area. I know for a fact that there may be seasonal water in spots in the fields in the area, but they are not sustainable year-round. Following a Freedom of Access Act request to the Maine Inland Fisheries and Wildlife, I also received from Becky Orff an email of which I'm just going to take a few minutes and just do parts of it, but I will give a copy to Mr. Talbot and Mr. Theberge for your files if anyone wants to read the whole letter. It starts out with Dear Lois. Quote, an adult blanding turtle was found crossing the road back in May of 2000 in Durham. That has puzzled us for years, given the location is just far enough outside of what we generally consider to be this species range in Maine. After 23 years without any additional reports, and this is biologist Derek Yorks, I'm not incredibly optimistic about the possibility of an outlying population there. And yet, everything we've heard is that the reason that the resource protection was put into place was because of the Blandings turtle. Inland Fisheries and Wildlife says there's not a population. Perhaps someone picked a turtle up on the road in Cumberland, in York. Maybe they brought it to Durham, but there's not, according to the state biologist, any population that's sustainable. But my concern tonight goes beyond the inability of anyone to confirm a blanding turtle population in Durham, beyond one specimen 23 years ago. My concern goes to the heart of parliamentary procedure in our planning board meetings. As an advocate for my neighbors, an email from our town planner, George Thabarge, was shared with me. In the email, George stated, quote, at our November 1st meeting, the majority of the planning board voted against pursuing that concept of granting landowner relief as a warrant article for the April 24, printing error, town meeting. This was regarding the discussion related to the runaround pond area. So the quote again, at their November 1st meeting, the majority of the planning board voted against pursuing that concept of granting landowner relief as a warrant article for the April 2024 town meeting. I watched that video of the November 1st meeting many times, probably at least 10, to ascertain what the committee said and the motion that was voted on. What Mr. Thabarge reported in the email is not the motion that was made by John Talbot at the November 1st meeting. The motion that Mr. Talbot made stated, and I quote, George looks into the legality of spot zoning, arbitrary speed limit, whatever the legal thing may be, and if it comes back it is illegal, then it kills it, and if it is legal, we continue to the Conservation Committee, and we can then decide at our December meeting whether we are going to go beyond that. The language was voted on by the Planning Committee and failed 2 in favor, 3 against. Editing a motion after a vote has been taken would require a motion to reconsider if this planning board follows Robert's Rules of Order, and would have to be voted upon by the committee. In board governance best practices, a section entitled Board Meeting Minutes, 8 Things You Should Never Miss, the author states, for motions, include the exact wording of the statement and the name of the person making the motion. Some organizations might require the name of the person seconding as well. Bowie adds that if the motion is not worded properly, it's up to the chair to help the member modify the wording. The recording secretary should then record exactly what was said. It's not the responsibility of the secretary to edit the motion, unquote. So once again, this was the motion. George looks into the legality of spot zoning, arbitrary speed limit, whatever the legal thing may be, and if it comes back, it is legal, it then kills it, and if it comes back it is illegal, it then kills it, and if it is legal, we continue on to Conservation Committee, and we can then decide at our December meeting whether we are going to go beyond that. In my experience with parliamentary procedure, at no time is it ethical or acceptable for the secretary to report the motion language as anything but what the actual language that was put forth in the motion. In this case, the planning board voted on Mr. Talbot's language as I have transcribed it. Without passing judgment, as a resident, I find the actual motion to be more than a little confusing, since when I dissect it, it has little meaning. It certainly does not say what Mr. Thabarge said and sent as the motion language in his email. I caution the planning board that if I'm confused, there are others in the community who will be confused as well. I encourage this committee in the future to be sure that the motion is coherent and easily understandable, since you are representing not your personal views, but the views of the community. I did not have the draft minutes from the November 1st, 2023 meeting available to review, since they have not been approved by this committee and had not been publicly posted. I would, however, suggest the planning board amend the minutes to represent the actual wording of the motion, if it is anything less. Thank you very much for your time. Hope you take to heart what I say, because it was very difficult to understand what that motion meant. There's a copy for your file
Thank you.
and a copy for Mr. Talbot.
Thank you. Good luck in your
Have a nice
class.
evening.
Yeah, you too.
Okay, next up on the agenda is, I guess, any other residents, since we're on the resident piece of this, on things that are not part of tonight's agenda? Okay. Then the next is town officials, Mr. Thabarge.
The only thing I have is the update on the amount of development going on in town. And you have, based on the latest code enforcement officer report, I believe, John, you got it as well, I think it's 18. And as you may recall, under the comprehensive plan, implementation, if it ever exceeds 45 in a single year, then that would be the cause for calling a special meeting and considering a moratorium and an update to the comprehensive plan, so that, but it wasn't close, so.
So-
overall, we-
18 is total for the year?
Yes.
Yep.
Through October.
Which is a little bit higher than what was going on at the time of the comprehensive plan update, but it's also less than what has happened in the last few years.
Yeah, we averaged something around 20, I think 2021 last year, jumped up to 32,
34,
I'm sorry.
34.
And then this year it's down, back down in the, that's on when it crosses 20, but 18, so.
What,
And-
what about the permits that are issued? Are we keeping our eye on that? Is it about the same? Like, so the number that you're talking about is the
New housing starts.
new housing starts, and then there's also permits issued,
Mhm.
right? Is that kind of the?
Well, those would all be renovations, additions, and those sorts of things.
Oh, okay.
The 18
So it
are new,
doesn't- Okay.
that 18 does not include my, refixing my
Got
upstairs
it,
or
but
something.
so for this month it was 22. That number includes any,
No, I'm sorry,
upgrades.
previous years it was 22 for the year, but the
22
22,
would be the number of permits, I think.
issued per
Right,
the
that would
month.
be electrical,
Right, that's what,
plumbing, and
yeah,
all
okay.
permits, I think.
Okay.
Mhm.
So the 18 is within the total number of permits issued,
Yes.
whether they be electrical, plumbing, or new housing.
Wait, to be clear, 18 single-family building permits for the year,
For
but
the
the
total.
22 is the monthly number of permits pulled for the various other,
Yeah, sorry, I didn't-
Right.
yes.
just
think
per
that's
month.
correct.
So there's 22 electrical, plumbing, et cetera, and 18 single-house permits for the whole year.
From what I understand.
Okay, all right. I was getting confused into
That's
a
what happens when
spiral
we
of
juggle
doom.
apples and
Yeah.
oranges.
Okay, so that was good. Anything else for that building first? I have two housekeeping things. The first one is, our next meeting is scheduled for January 3rd. It would be good if we get everybody or almost everybody here because of all the stuff we're working on, applicants and land use stuff. Is that a good date for, it's early, but did anybody know they're gonna be in the Bahamas that week or visiting grandma or
Is that why we're having the meeting, you said?
in the Bahamas? Yeah, I'll check to see this in the budget.
I'm good for that day.
It works
Yeah, I am
for me.
fine.
Okay.
It works for me
Excellent.
too.
Excellent, thank you. We may have to, depend upon what comes out of solar and other things, take a look at another, depending on how we move forward with housing, what happens with solar, we still have to have some formal public hearings down the road, so, and I think I read, the town manager put out something about the budget schedule, and I think February 13th is the drop dead to get the budget info to the selectmen to make it for the article, the town report, excuse me. That was one. The other thing is, so that you can make sure you get enough TV ad time by and stuff, we do have elections the first meeting of the year. So, just for everybody's information. And with that, I think non-residents, seeing none.
Is there going to be a presentation tomorrow night with,
Oh, yeah, solar is going tomorrow evening. The Conservation Commission is running the meeting on the solar, land use.
which is held at the Eureka Center, is that
Fire
correct?
station.
I
Fire
thought it's
station.
Eureka.
It's Eureka,
Oh, it is Eureka?
pretty sure. I'll
Yeah.
double check.
Right now, it's, yeah, I think it's Eureka.
I stand corrected, I just,
You're thinking of the,
well, going forward, all public meetings, including ours, at some point in time, ours are supposed to be at the fire station.
yeah,
Because if the town budget passes to allow this room to be split into offices.
Oh,
So, obviously, that can't happen until
right,
April, May, June, something like that, but,
right.
so we have fire station in mind, so. If you would, George, when you find it, just let us know.
It may be on the calendar.
it should be.
It is, I just made an assumption that I've been to the fire station for meetings so much lately.
Does anybody know if that will be streamed or recorded?
Yes, I do know that for sure, that Kim Garneau will be there with, similar to what she did with our, housing density
It
thing.
will not
Probably.
be streamed, but it will be recorded and then broadcast.
Thank you.
Right.
And it is at Eureka,
At what time?
according to the calendar.
6 or 6:30?
Starts at 6:30.
6:30.
6:30 at Eureka, and it will not be
Eureka.
live streamed. So you can't sit there with your feet. Usually takes half a day to upload it from our camera, so it'll probably be sometime late Friday. That'll be on there. Okay, with that, I know the other thing I was gonna say, for those of you who are interested, the Union Church Committee finished our work last week before, and the recommendation to the select board is, and the Historical Society, Durham Historical Society agreed to sell it to them, although their offer was $1. I think we should get at least two. So, if the town accepts that, the select board accepts it, puts it in an article, if the town accepts it, but that's the latest and greatest on that. New business, so we're talking, if you folks would come on up.
I'm gonna recuse myself.
Just for everyone's reminder, Juliet is a neighbor and is recusing herself from the discussion. Thank you, Juliet. Okay, new business, completeness review of the site plan review application for expansion of the leisure campground for 40 RV sites, map 2, lot 13. There will be no public comment. And so, just as a reminder, you were in October or September, I have forgotten, but you've gotten your
Conditional use.
conditional use, thank you. So now we're here for, and tonight is, the first step is, do we believe that their submission is complete? And so, Mr. Tavares, would you like to do an introduction?
Yeah, I will just summarize quickly the agenda notes, which indicated that on September 6th of this year, you did give the conditional use approval for the addition of 40 new RV sites. And the notice of approval and the approval conditions are in your packet. Under the land use ordinance, as we discussed during that process, it's a two-step process. First is to look at the use, to see whether that is appropriate given the conditional use criteria. And then if it is, then it moves into the design review phase, which is the site plan review application that you have before you tonight. And I did indicate what is in the packet. You had that electronically. I do have hard copies here if you'd like to receive those. So we received the existing conditions plan with an indication on there of some of the improvements that we made as part of the campground expansion. The applicant also submitted a review fee and an escrow. And as we discussed, the calculation of site plan review fees and escrows are typically based on either the square footage of a commercial building or the square footage of a parking lot that's being built. This is a little bit unusual in terms of, so I talked with Ken and what we discussed and where he went with it was to say each of those RV sites is a parking area. So if you just take the area of those, that's how I think you came up with the calculation for it, for everything. So he's paid those fees, and he's also submitted the site plan and application. He did attach with that some cut sheets for various electrical and water and service features. And he also included the checklist, and he filled out that. I did distribute to the board yesterday and sent Ken a copy of, just looking out through trying to facilitate your process of deciding whether the application is complete or not. And I also sent out a draft, what incomplete letter indicating what I saw on that checklist, which is really for the board to review, give the applicant an opportunity to question or challenge any of those assumptions on my part of what's there and what's not there. And given the nature of the project, I think the applicant is looking for some kind of direction from the board on how you're going to approach this little bit out of the box application. So will you require a complete checklist, everything? If not, or if you are, then if he does apply for waivers, do you want, as you've discussed when we originally started the waivers, Durham has a pretty liberal waiver policy for submissions, and procedure and for standards. So the board, when we started that process, was very hesitant and concerned that applicants will just submit applications with 50 waiver requests. And so you said you're gonna, to discourage that, you're gonna require a separate waiver request for every individual. But I think you should perhaps consider on each application the nature of the project and the nature of the waiver requests, and then make a decision whether you're willing to consider them as a package with proper justification and make one vote on it, or if each individual item you have questions about and concerns, then you could say, let's treat all of them as individual applications or some of them. So it's really up to your discretion on how you want to proceed with that and how you feel about an application you receive. So the first step in the process is to do a completeness review. Only the planning board has the authority under the ordinance to determine whether an application is complete or incomplete. So my checklist is just simply a staff review, and it's up to the board to really decide whether you consider the application to be complete or not. And you can either use the checklist or the draft completeness letter to discuss and decide whether you think the application is complete.
Good. Could you just give us a quick reminder, do you have any other additional comments as the applicants that you would like to make on where we are?
We just, so if you look at the plans, we did move some of the sites. We had to do a curvature of the road to, for the offset for the house at the end, for the 400-foot setback. Also, with the angle of the big RVs coming through, it
I'm sorry,
wasn't,
can you
it
just
wasn't enough.
describe and plan where you're talking?
George is gonna
What I'll
show,
do
I
is
think,
I'll try to get it up on the screen, then maybe Ken, you could go up and just kind of show them. I'll zoom in just a little.
It's a nice print.
Sit down, scale down. Here, if you wanna just go up and show them what you're talking about.
So right here, we had,
You're good.
Oh, you're.
so we had a road, we have a road, it's a trail coming down through here that we were gonna be connecting onto this one here. But from here to here, we needed to have, we had sites coming down through here, a couple sites in here, but it was too close to the house. We needed 400 feet, so we ixnayed this road here and just made this at more of an angle so we can have more sites, not sites, but more of a radius to be able to get the bigger campers through here. And then I believe this is a curve right here too, a little bit more, but it's just a little bit, same sites, same things. We had the, I believe I had the tank here, but I actually moved it up to the top over here. I don't know if that's on the other one or this one, but I moved it to there just so the fire department would have a better access at that point instead of coming through here, because this is gonna be no longer the road itself. I wasn't gonna, invest the money all the way through here and not be able to put sites on it. It didn't make financial, it didn't make sense at that point in time if you couldn't put sites on it, so.
And this may be, anything else you guys wanted to add?
Nope.
So this is probably a good time to state that we're doing the completeness review. So the question is, are there engineering plans? We can talk about radius of curves and those other kinds of things once we get into the actual site plan review after this initial step. Correct me if I'm wrong with that. So, okay, so I guess what the applicants have done, thank you for that, is submitted some information we have to determine if it's complete. There is, I would suggest, a lot of things on our checklist that were not provided. And I just wanna make sure NA stands for not applicable. Is
Not
that-
applicable, yeah.
Okay.
That's just all the stuff, I mean, that is a pretty complete list of stuff, and, I didn't think a lot of the stuff was, you know, complied. And then, I'm coming here wondering, you know, we've gone through the conditional use permitting, we've already been through a lot of this stuff already, what actually do you want me to do or provide for the next steps, as far as that goes?
Okay.
You know?
Well, I guess I'd like to start the discussion on this and what is there is that, it is a very comprehensive, and that is for a reason.
Sure.
Campgrounds are different. So, my thought is that it is not your call, not you personally, but the applicant's call is whether it's applicable or not. It is the board's call on that. So, my thought would be that, because I think that's really what we're here to discuss tonight, to a great extent, is, I will pick the one that, when I was looking at it today, was a landscape plan. I guess I'll get to the chase, is what I'd like to see is a waiver for all the things that are on it here, whether it's one big waiver or individual, without getting too bureaucratic, and a simple explanation on why it isn't applicable in this case, or you didn't provide it. So a landscape plan is maybe an example, and I'm not saying that this would be approved or not, but the waiver may say, I'll try to be concise, as I've been criticized about my verbiage.
The wooded site.
It's a wooded site, you've got 100-foot, I think it was 100-foot landscape buffer with heavy vegetation. It is a wooded site, therefore this is the reason we don't think a landscape plan is
It's already
required.
there,
Yeah, yes, it exists, and so, or, whatever it may be, then the board can say, yep, we agree, it's a 100-foot buffer, and they may not, but
Okay.
I'm just
It just gives
Talbot's
an answer.
opinion. I'm just trying to give an example, that may be, something, I'm just, trying to, think of some other stuff, but guess what and I don't wanna make this hard, so it doesn't, in my opinion, we'll get to probably the details later, on some of the subjects, we don't need 40 is there a fee to waivers?
No.
Okay,
John, I did print out hard copies of the draft, if that would be helping. The completeness letter lists all of the items.
it does,
So
And it's also in the email that he sent to us.
Yes.
If you have that.
So if anybody would like a hard copy, I can.
I've got one right here, but if the others would, or the applicant would.
And the great thing about that, George, is it goes down by item, which is versus arbitrarily picking things out. The first one that comes to my attention when we're looking at the site plan review submissions required for completeness review. And the first one that comes to mind is C.3, documentation of legal rights to develop property. And it appears that has not been submitted.
Yeah, and in my email cover to this, I pointed out to the board that I think it's important for the board to give direction to the applicant on whether you consider this to be a completely separate application, because I'm assuming that the applicant is saying, oh, I already gave you that.
Correct.
So if you are okay with that, and you expect the staff to compile all of the documents for the applicant from the conditional use application for this application, it has to be part of this record. So the issue would be, if you're okay with just saying, oh yeah, we've already got that, then that would be one thing. If you say, look, this is a completely separate process with its own criteria and submission requirements, we want a complete package of the application with all supporting document, so that when we get to the findings and conclusions, like we did with the conditional use, I can go down through and for this application, not the conditional use application. And I'd also point out that, for example, some of the documents that were provided for the conditional use review, like the soils, it was a preliminary soils investigation that simply showed where the test pits were, and told the applicant, here are the sizes of, you will be required for a septic system design. So that's not a septic system design that this board should be requiring, in my opinion, under waste facilities that you're supposed to review and approve to make sure they're adequate. So there's some differences, and just my view of it is this should be a completely separate application with all supporting documentation.
So has that been expressed to the applicant?
Well, it's really up to the board.
No, that's
Okay.
why we're
It's
here.
really up
Okay,
to
that's
the
why-
board to give
I'd,
that.
I'd like to add something here too. You know, this is, it's not a subdivision, so there's, you know, it's a little bit different. This is a, you know, personal property, and it's a state licensed facility. So for me to go through this process, I have to go through the conditional use permit, you know, process which we did. Now I have to go through this, whatever this is, the site plan review, and then I have to go through the state to get the public water source. So the state comes in and does the public water source and says, okay, you're all set with the water, right? So then I have to get a engineered system that I have to get approved by the state as well. So they come in and say, okay, that's all set, so that's all approved by the state again before I can get my permit. And then the electrical is all state too. There's nothing to do with electrical here. So the state, the plumbing, and the water is all done by the state before I can even get in there. So I know we're doing our due diligence and stuff like that, making sure that we're going through all these processes and stuff like that. So I guess my thoughts on this whole thing was, you know, as far as plans and radiuses of stuff and where things are going, and as far as, you know, the town saying, okay, you have your setbacks, you have this, you're meeting the town requirements as far as that, fine. But, you know, by me saying, you know, not applicable, I'm saying, well, I don't think it's applicable for this project. If you say it is, fine, I'll do, you know, I'll give you 100 waivers if you want to try and get through the process. But I'm just wondering, is that what you want me to do? You want me to write a waiver for each thing and submit? Because I remember what George asked me if I was putting in waivers in, and I go, well, I don't know. I have to meet with the board to see what, you know, if the conditional use is gonna meet, or if we're gonna have to start the whole process over again, which, I mean, we can start the whole thing over again if you want. But as far as the conditional use application and permitting with our findings, I already submitted things from that. I already got the legal status. I already got all that, things that we could check. But like I said, it's up to you guys, whatever you wanna do.
Are we aware, well, at least I'm not, as to what applications the applicant has already met through state requirements?
I can't do anything, I can't file any state requirements or anything until I get through the process of saying yea or nay.
You need the town
I-
approval.
Correct, I need a town approval, so,
Okay.
and I've been waiting for, you know, we got a substantial amount of money that we've been paying interest on for quite some time now, waiting for this process to go through, no fault of our own, but that's just the way it is. And then once I get my town approval, it's still gonna be 3 months for me to go through the state. So it's not, and then I gotta go through construction process. So if you look at the construction aspect of it, I said projects is gonna have to be completed in 2025. That's not this year, next year. So just to be, you know, give you the process of what's going on. You're holding the ball for 2 years, so.
Okay. That helps.
Would it make sense to go through just item by item, which of these we think can carry over from, or if anyone feels strongly that they can't, from the previous ones, and what could be amended by a waiver from the lists that George prepared of
And I
complete items?
recognize campgrounds are different, but I kinda think that ball kinda should be in the applicants, because this is what I wanna do, rather than you tell me what I have to do, because this list does that. The other thing is, I'm not sure I understand, for instance, deeds is probably as good as any. I consider this a separate application, but you gave us the deeds, how hard is it to, because what we're gonna.
It's already here.
Yeah.
All the findings for the meeting are already in this. You already have
Yeah,
everything
I
here.
got you, but what I would like to see, what we're gonna need down the road is 20 years from now, 30 years from now. Somebody's gonna wanna say, well, what did they get approved? Why was it approved? What was the electrical system,
You have it here.
but two different files. So let me finish, and you'll get your opportunity.
Sure.
We've gone through this drill, let me finish. And so that's my feeling about it, rather than, but I'm game to do whatever the board would like to do.
I agree, John, and I'm quite sure the applicant doesn't want anything to come back to them 5 years or 2 years down the road, and making sure that this is the process that the planning board went through, and we met these requirements, and here's the paperwork to justify it all. The planning board we have that responsibility to go through these line by line. And I think it's already been documented, and I'm certain that if we went through these, then identify the ones specifically, then we can get a paper trail to make sure it's all been satisfied.
So you wanted to go through it line by line this evening, is that?
That, based on the checklist, yes.
Okay.
I don't want anything to be misunderstood, I guess.
Yeah, no, I agree. I was just postponing it a step, but Brian?
I agree. I mean, it's an application that has requirements, and whether or not it's been submitted in the past, that's a separate application. This is a different application, and everything should be included in that application.
And
And then if the applicant has that information, it just should simply have been submitted as part of this.
And you wanna make sure that the ownership hasn't changed since, so that
Right.
would be a reason for asking.
and when I
I'm
look
not
at.
saying that it has, I'm just saying.
Right.
Like we're digging deep here. So, to get back what you were saying, you know, the town wants to see what's going on with this and that. Well, this is, like I said, it's a state permanent facility, so the town has nothing to do with electrical over there. So for you to
Oh,
figure
yes,
out
we
what's
do.
going
If
in
there's
for
a-
permitting
if
and stuff like
there-
that, it just,
Our
Hold on a
guy's,
second.
our guy's gonna come out there and inspect it. So
Well,
we're in the board discussion, and we'll call on you for the future, so.
your guy doesn't do
Let us
it.
finish the
it's a-
board, let's not do this again.
I'm just trying to comment on what you were
Please quit
saying before.
interrupting and let us not do it again. So, Mr. Lanoy. So I think what we're saying is whether we go through the checklist tonight and help the applicant out on this one and tell them which ones.
I think that's a good thing to do, and when I look at some of these, which indicates that we haven't received a paper trail on it, I'm quite sure that the applicant already has the information, but it just hasn't been presented. That's my interpretation.
I'm not arguing that, I'm struggling with how hard was it to put it into the package to submit on the original application?
It's already there. This is all the findings from the conditional use. Is that what that is, George?
Yes, but there are
Yes.
things on this checklist that are not there, such as a signage plan, a lighting plan.
Yeah.
There are other things that are not
Yeah,
in.
I understand, but they keep saying that the stuff is not submitted from when was submitted the application, and here it is right here. Is that not a true statement?
Let's stop, okay? It's not your turn to talk, I'm not gonna recognize you. So if you need a few minutes just to catch your breath,
I don't
we'll give
need,
you.
I don't need any time.
Okay, then let us stop. So, do we wanna go through this? And I'm fine with that. We can, you'll have to, but if we don't see it tonight, then, you're gonna have to come back. And I will tell you now, is if we require an electrical thing, we're gonna wanna see an electrical thing. We're not, or if the state will give you an electrical approval first, we might consider that. We've done that with MDOT approvals. But the paperwork should have been submitted with the original one. And so, we're ready to begin going through those A through P.
Can I just back up?
Yeah, sure.
Before we start with the checklist, getting back to the application fee. There's been a lot of discussion in the past about fees in general. And so like George, you might have come to an agreement with the applicant on parking and how that was determined. Do you have any other discussions with the select board or the town solicitor or the assessment folks about how that fee should have been calculated?
The board has authority over whether to grant approval or not. If you think the fees are inadequate based on the ordinance, then that's something that you can discuss and decide.
Can you explain that one more time, how you came to that?
how we came to it is we discussed that each of those, was it 1,000 square feet per camp,
It was
Site.
400 square feet per campsite.
400 square feet per campsite. So if you multiply that times 40, those are parking areas, which is the language of the ordinance. It's a certain amount per 1,000 square feet of parking areas. So that was the methodology that was used to determine it.
That's fine. Well, that's, I don't have an issue with that.
Yeah,
I think that this is an unusual situation
And
where.
that's why I bring it up.
Right, right.
Exactly.
Where
That's a
something
good
hasn't
point.
been established, but that is our justification for establishing that fee.
And I trust that this, that our professional staff has worked up a solution that I think is acceptable. But any other, like, general comments before we start going through the list of items? Okay, well, I will start the list and we'll go through there. I won't read off the section numbers, I'll just go down. 10 copies of full-size site plan versus 8. I said the missing 8, if I misunderstood this. Do we think there should be, the challenge we often have is reading things like on the screen, but if you all are comfortable waiving that? I guess, before we go even further, I would still think that we would want to have a waiver request. And it could just be a handwritten thing so that or somehow we need a document that we looked at this and we made a decision that 10 weren't required, if that's what we're gonna do. So I don't know how we do that, but I'd prefer the waiver or something official that when, because people will, maybe not on the leisure campground, but people will and have questioned, we'd be able to say, we followed our rules, we made a decision as a board to approve that waiver request. How do we want to document that?
I've always struggled with that especially with today's technology, site plans and whatnot there's usually a hard copy that is made available, and that should be filed with an application. Granted, we've always said more, like 9, 10 copies for a board, but we do so much electronically today. I look at things electronically all the time. And I'm just saying, if there's one on file, personally, if there's one on file to view, whether it be now or in the future, it meets the requirement. We have the electronic one.
Yeah, I'm not hung up on 10, I just want to say that whether it be, pick another copy, but we recognize we accepted the fact there were only 2 copies. That's a minor issue, so I'm fine with waiving that.
Fine.
If there's a big one up here that we can look at, or, as he said, the electronic things.
I can get you 10 copies if that's what's holding
Hold tight.
things up here.
Don't volunteer just yet. Are we good with 2 copies?
I am.
Okay.
I
George?
agree, but that is our rule to have 10, so I feel like something needs to happen. As stupid as that sounds, I think that there needs to be a paperwork trail. Having lived in Germany with the number of rules, like, you cross the Ts and dot the Is, and it's really annoying and horrible, but that's how it goes.
Yeah, I don't think that this is one but somebody down the road, and not necessarily in this project, but somebody came in and said, well, they never proved to you that they owned it, or they never provided you the paperwork, there wasn't wildlife or whatever. So how do we document these kinds of things short of
Well,
requesting?
if you are going to consider waiver request, that could just be a line item on a waiver request if you accept the bulk
Is
one.
everybody okay with that? And I don't think we need,
But it is very important to carry a paper record, because what I've learned at planning conferences and zoning conferences is that 80% of the cases that are overturned of board decisions are based on procedural errors. So that's the type of thing where a lawyer could say, oh, they didn't follow the ordinance, and try to
Right.
validate it.
I think that's what I'm trying to get to, is it's just documented proof that, this is what we did. So, so a waiver to only provide 2 is good. Documentation of legal rights to develop the property. Could you just give us a copy of the latest and greatest deed, and as a separate application, and we can move on from that one? So we don't need to waive, I don't believe that's,
Right.
I guess, is that the same as the copy of the deed and
Very happy in there.
Any encumbrances? For documentation of legal rights
Not
developed.
looking at any-
Okay, so he's the owner, we don't need somebody signing off on
No,
it.
no, 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 but in that documentation from the conditional use, which should be part of this application as well, you had the filing of the corporate secretary, you had the
Okay.
deed, and you had the
Okay.
easements for the cell tower.
Can we use his submitting a copy of what he keeps waving around there as the submission if that's?
You could, yeah, you could
Rather than
say,
a separate
you could.
deed or-
Again, we just need a paper trail, and so the findings for the site plan review would say deed from the conditional use review.
Everybody okay with that?
I am.
Very okay.
Okay, so the documentation of legal rights, we would just say that provided in.
It's already provided.
Yeah, already provided. Copy of deed and any encumbrances, we're okay with already provided?
That, yes, I'm sorry, that was the same thing. So 3 and 5 are really the same.
Okay,
Yeah.
C3, okay.
Yeah, so for example, you might have a purchase and sale agreement for a developer.
Yeah.
It's not a deed.
So he is both, C.3 and C.5. Copy of septic system test pit logs. Is that in the original, not the original, but the?
Again, this is not the same thing. It says it's a copy of septic system test pit logs. There was a preliminary soil investigation. That is different than an HHE 200 that has the official, this is where this, and you remember, there were multiple septic systems on that thing. So we need to see what exactly.
A
he
test
is-
pit wherever the
is-
septic system, wherever the tank is going. Everybody agrees, so that, we're not willing to waive?
Or he can apply for a waiver if he wants. But
Right,
you're
Or
saying-
apply
either
for
way.
waiver.
Right.
But I don't,
But eventually, it's gonna need to be supplied.
yes. So we may be asking for it earlier than the applicant would want to do it, but yes, so a copy of the test pit logs would be required. Indication of zoning district.
It's a simple note on the plan, which the consultant should have put on the plan. Just read the ordinance, look at the checklist, put it on the plan.
Okay.
Very simple.
So please have them put it on the plan. Drainage ways and culverts, thoughts on that, given it's a campground?
So this ties into P, which is the stormwater plan. So if you have a stormwater plan, it should show how the drainage is gonna be handled, where the drainage is gonna be discharged, and whether or not there are any types of mitigation of stormwater runoff that are required. This may or may not require a DEP permit for disturbance under the site, stormwater management law. If they're disturbing more than an acre of land, then they may need a DEP permit. And you remember that was an issue on the Hollowell Road subdivision, where they were saying we didn't need it because we've already got stuff there. So you may either want to have the applicant submit a stormwater plan or get documentation from DEP that a stormwater plan is not required. And that goes back to the issue of drainage ways and culverts.
Well, my only concern about drainage is, we've tried over the the science, or whatever the right term is, moving away from, moving water across the site as much as possible, when possible, and this is a natural campground site. My only concern with that is anything that is leaving their property, the campground, that's going either into a ditch along 136 or into a neighbor's property. And how are you all, is the applicant going to control that stuff? But that's my thoughts on what is needed. Anybody else?
And but that speaks to erosion and sedimentation, or are you looping that into?
No, well, yes, you'd have to have an erosion plan wherever you're moving dirt and all that other stuff, but also if one of this water is gonna leave the site, clean through a silt fence or not, is whatever the receiving stream, neighbor's yard, whatever, capable of taking that.
But this specifically only says location with size of existing and proposed culverts and drainage ways shown. Just making sure it's documented where it is. It's not necessarily, I don't think it's addressed elsewhere about effect of that runoff.
That's in the stormwater plan.
That's in this, that would be right. You would think that the stormwater plan would indicate where all those culverts are.
This is a pervious area, it's not an impervious area, so that means you're not gonna have sheet flow, you're not gonna have any of that stuff going across, anything like that. You're not gonna have it going across driveways, or it's not running off of big roofs and houses and stuff like that. That would be a sedimentary plan, but I've never.
Well, my concern is that it-
So,
Again, inside the camping area, because it is a natural site, I'm less concerned that as you accumulate water, or you do start getting flow from the swimming pool, office area onto 136, should there be a storm plan for that? Is that it?
And again, this gets back to the issue, the application under the ordinance requires a stormwater plan to be submitted. If the applicant thinks that it's overkill, then he can file a waiver request and make the arguments of why it's not necessary.
Right,
We're good with that?
that's an option, right?
All right, waiver on, so that would be C12 and C29, if I'm not mistaken, George. So we don't have to go back over those. So only just main traffic entrance site distances.
Hold on, are we agreeing to a waiver on C20?
No, that he has to submit a waiver that we would approve.
Gotcha.
No, I think, my feeling is that I'm not ready to say it's not needed.
Exactly.
But you have the right to submit a waiver, and that's probably something we'd have the road commissioner take a look at, see what impact is going forward. So thank you for that clarification. So a waiver is required that we may or may not, there's no guarantee it would be approved.
C14?
C14, main traffic entrance site distances. I do know that there was a letter from MDOT, or emails, saying it was grandfathered, but that does not speak to, I don't think he said anything about site distances. And having just lived that a couple months ago with Union Church, the MDOT guy said, if you're gonna do this use, you've got this, you have to define this entrance, and I don't remember the distance, but it was 300 feet, 260 feet from either direction. So I think you need to show on your drawing with your engineer that says, whatever the state requirement is, there's at least that 300 feet, 260, whatever it is. So that's something your engineer should say, you have it in both directions. And
I would have thought that the state would have already approved that from the original development.
I don't think there was any approval of it. I think it was.
They did it.
what-
1970s, 60s, whenever it was.
There wasn't a requirement then?
Apparently not.
It probably was, but I don't know that, I think it was, correct me if I'm wrong, the only thing that was in the original submission was a letter from Mr. Terrell, and I'm not picking on him, that said it was grandfathered. He didn't say there was X number, it's like Union Church.
Okay.
You
But
know,
it's also not changing conditional use, so you can't, I thought that meant the grandfather stayed since the conditional use is not changing.
That'd be a good question for them, if he comes back and says, I don't need to know the whatever. I struggle to not have it, get into the trouble we've had on 136 with other issues. And it may be very easy to come up with that, stand here 11.5 feet each way, and then, Tyler, I don't remember what it was at the church, 260 or whatever it was, that you've got that site distance. So please either provide it or waivers, I think what I'm saying. Waste disposal types and facilities, septic and solid. Go ahead, I'm
I
sorry.
was just gonna say, look, there's two ways of looking at it. The applicant is looking at, this is just a septic system. I'm looking at it from the standpoint, this is a public, they give a public water system under Maine law. This is a semi-public sewer system, in that you're gonna be servicing 40 RV sites. All of these are gonna be connected to water, they're gonna be connected to sewer, and so it's more than just this traditional single-family home septic system. So the board really needs to give an indication to the applicant, are you comfortable with just treating it like a standard home septic system, and the piping all goes where it goes, because that's, pretty simple? Or are you saying, look, no, this is a semi-public sewer system, and we need to see an engineering design for the whole thing?
Does everybody know here that I'm getting an engineered system for the sewer system? I have to get it, it's anything over 2,000 gallons, you need an engineered system. It's 5,000 gallons a day.
Yes, and thank you for saying that, because my thought was you have to do that anyway. So
Yeah.
just give it to us.
I have to do that anyway.
Yeah.
And it's gotta go through the state's gotta permit it,
Yeah.
that's what my original,
Just gonna come to us first and then, so yes, so I don't think we're asking you anything that you're not, I don't see that as an additional cost. I do am concerned, although it's not the number one concern about additional costs, so please just do that and get it to us.
Or request a waiver.
Or, yes, or request, you always have the right to request a waiver. It may be, that may be a harder one to, okay, so everybody okay with, they'll submit that or a waiver
Yeah.
plan or,
Yeah.
okay. Moving on to detailed, C17, detailed plan for campsites and pedestrian circulation. Thoughts?
I know it's on the list, I'm a little, I don't really is this primarily for safety equipment to understand flow of traffic? Or is this just another thing that we're like, it's a campsite, just put in writing why this is not important and we can
But
move on?
that is an option. I think it's there because, you know, we wanna know which way.
What you have on the site plan right now is ovals,
Mhm.
little ovals. There's really no detail about how much of those are gonna be cleared. The applicant has given you a square footage, but that doesn't show you on the ground where those are gonna be. And as far as pedestrian is concerned, depending on the nature of the campground, I went to one up in Skowhegan this past summer, and you had kids on little, and I know that's not your type of campground, but you have kids on those little electric cars going in the same roadway as cars. And so you should look at what is the pedestrian usage that's gonna be anticipated, and should they have separate pedestrian facilities, you know, perhaps a trail through the woods like he was discussing, for pedestrians to be segregated from the traffic. Not saying you should or you shouldn't, I'm just saying that's why it requires, indication of those circulation patterns, so that you can make a decision.
Well, initial thought on campsites is that, I don't wanna put words, that I'm assuming that the applicant would lay out the campsite to protect as many trees and other things, so it may be real hard to, like a house lot, you can boom, 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 like I clear these trees. I'm just wondering if, on a campsite, if there's not, if a general circle, oval, square is not sufficient in this case, and where they're gonna be. Now, it should be really close to what we see on that screen there, and you've already made some tweaks based upon iterations of plans.
Well, I'm thinking, if there's a speed limit, I mean, I would think that the speed limit wouldn't be any higher than 15 miles per hour. I'm thinking of, like in front of a school, and even in this school here, there are no sidewalks here. But when kids are walking on the road, whether it be in a campsite or in a school setting, the speed limit is lowered specifically for those reasons. And I would think that if a speed limit is posted within the campsite,
the campground speed limit is posted at 5 miles an hour.
Yeah, okay.
And obviously, it's ridiculous, you know, you're not gonna go 5 miles an hour, but you're not gonna be going 15 either.
Right. very
Which
difficult.
gets back to signage plan, and it also relates to when we do the findings, one of the criteria is this applicant, is the board is to make a finding that there is pedestrian and vehicular safety. So what you would do is take from their application or their waiver request, or both, and put into their findings on the basis that you made a determination that there will not be any pedestrian or vehicular hazards. It's all about how do we document your decisions.
Okay, well, when we get to that, that's a good point. So let's sticking with campsites, are we just kinda good with what's shown on the map in terms of I'm talking the campsite location now, not the,
Another option would be to just have a typical, one of these is a typical site. So here's what every site will be, how much area will be cleared. So have a detail of just one, and then that'll be the pattern.
I'm not needing,
Okay.
I'm not needing that, but I'm one of, I guess, 4 tonight, so.
I mean,
just circumvent this whole list and say, except for what we already talked about with, we already have the deeds for C3 and C5, just something, just a waiver in writing that says why it's not needed, or just provide information on it?
That's where I started, but I think we're halfway through. I think they're asking for guidance, we're halfway through providing them guidance. Tyler,
Okay, I don't know how much guidance we're providing, other than repeating ourselves
Yeah.
to say it could be waived or we should have information.
Given the type of application, I'm satisfied with this level of detail.
okay.
It's just me.
So I think, we'll talk signage in a second about, I guess I am always worried about kids getting hit, but it is a campground, it is, people should be, you're gonna put up some signs, but, and when we get to that, we'll probably say you have to put up the signage. So, proposed landscaping and buffering, if any. I don't see the need for additional landscaping anywhere, and I would be
I don't either.
fine with a waiver that just kinda says this is a heavily wooded area, and we have 100, whatever they are, whatever your buffers are with heavy vegetation, so at one sentence.
I would
line.
agree.
I'm just telling you that I think that waiver would stand a good chance. Locations and details of signage, thoughts on that there, gentlemen?
I think we've talked about it, I think he knows exactly.
Are you good with what we're looking, speed limit signs?
Yes.
Yeah, there's,
Oh, yeah.
It's already up there.
okay.
I mean, as far as signage, is that the campground sign
Could you
that's
just
already
put a-
there, or what are you talking about signage, like?
A speed limit sign?
Oh, yes,
Yeah.
yes.
Yeah, your advertising side just meets our.
Another issue is the fire department being able to find out where campsites are if they get emergency calls.
Yeah, that's another thing, is we did, we did modify that a little bit, so we will have to come back and there's, because these sites will go in this way, we'll have to move those 4 sites back on the other side, so I'll update the fire department with that new list for that.
And I think what George is saying, do you have a sign that's, and maybe you do, just, how do I know to go to campsite 40?
This way.
Right.
For the tank itself.
Yeah, so when the fire department shows up, 1 through 20 this way, 2, whatever,
Yep.
21 through, so that helps your campers as well. So that's the kind of signage that we'd like to see on the plan, I think. And it doesn't have to be fancy, it could just be a directional sign,
We're fine with
and the
signs.
dot, that works for me. Lighting, location and something type of area lighting. Do we wanna,
And the intent of the ordinance criteria standards is to have adequate lighting for safety purposes, but not to create glare or sky glow. Those are kind of the goals and the criteria that are in the site plan review when you get there. So if you have no lighting plan, then you can't make a determination of whether it does or doesn't cause those problems.
I think a lot of the glare on most places is when someone is exiting if we're creating a driveway, it's clear that when someone comes out of a campsite, that they're not glaring into the neighbors across the road, and I don't think that's the situation, I don't think there's a neighbor across the road. So,
this,
But glare.
what lighting do you plan to have, or have now, once I'm inside the camp?
We have lighting at the parking lot, we have lighting around the exterior buildings, we're more of a night sky campground, which is, you can see the night sky type deal.
So you're not gonna have lighting, because that is a possible, and what I say, obviously, if I got my kerosene lamp, going back to my Boy Scout days, kerosene lantern or something, but you're not gonna have lamp posts,
No,
or any kind of inside the campground kind of lighting?
no.
There again, basis for a waiver request.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah.
Unless it's required by the town, I'm not
I
gonna, we
don't-
can put a waiver for it.
Yeah, well, you'll need we will have no, or
Sure, we
only,
can talk about it next time,
what's that?
we're gonna talk about it next time, right?
Waiver, yeah, we'll go through, if you got the waivers in, we'll
Sure.
go through them, well, write them up and hopefully we can approve them. Or
Yeah.
or you'll know disapprove them right away, so
Sure.
when you're ready to come back in, if you've got all these written up and submitted to George 2 weeks in advance,
Right,
we'll be able to,
and then yeah,
so that's area lighting. So, are we good on lighting?
yes.
And they're good on, like, okay, so let's move on to, whatever, Maine inland fisheries and waterways, or whatever that is, wildlife. Did you get one of those? I can't remember for your conforming, non-conforming use?
No, that's not part of the conditional use.
I don't know what that is, so I guess we need to
You just write
The ordinance requires that the board make sure, determines that there's no presence of critical wildlife habitat based on state inventories. The typical process developers use is to contact the Maine Fisheries and Wildlife, saying we're doing this project, here's the location, do you have any recorded incidents? So then that becomes part of the record on which the board makes its decision that there's no wildlife impacts. Same thing with historical resources. This is just a standard procedure. It's a legal requirement, and if you don't do it, then your decision may be challenged.
Yeah, and so I think it is, well, those two are just a letter, email from those 2 or 3 departments, you know, that there are no rare blanding turtles there. Okay, so that's C 2627, or request a waiver, but I don't know how we would go on that one. Erosion and sedimentation and I guess stormwater are sort of the same things. And I will start it with a question, how much, you're gonna disturb some more earth because you are expanding or cutting new drives, correct?
Yes.
And so erosion control is a town requirement, and I would imagine a state requirement as well.
Depending on the size of the project and the area of
How
disturbance,
much
whether
it
it is
disturbs.
town, it's a requirement under site plan review that they have an erosion and sedimentation control. The board has discretion over whether to require a stormwater plan, and unless they hit over an acre of disturbance, then they would not necessarily need a DEP
Okay.
permit.
Thoughts?
I can just read what the ordinance says specifically. Might be helpful. The board may waive submission of the erosion and sedimentation control plan only if the project site is not in the watershed of Runaround Pond, and upon finding that the proposed project will not involve construction or grading which changes drainage patterns, and if impervious surfaces such as roofs, parking lots, and driveways are less than 5% of the area of the lot being developed. Obviously, it's 0. Calculations establishing the impervious surfaces limitations shall be submitted with the waiver request, and the maximum impervious surfaces shall be noted in the plan. So,
There are none. So a waiver that just says you don't have, that you're not gonna violate those, or if you do, the plan, or ask us not to allow the plan, or require the plan. Is that, am I concise and clear enough on that one?
Yes.
Okay, I'm trying to do better. And that, then in stormwater, Tyler, since you're so kind to be reading for us?
it's very similar. The board may waive submission of the stormwater management plan only if the project site is not in the watershed of Runaround Pond, and upon finding that the proposed development will not involve construction or grading of exactly the same text as we just said for erosion and sedimentation.
So, am I allowed to talk?
I think we have finished it, so yes, you may ask a question.
So, the original campground, are we still in the original campground? So when we did the conditional use permit, we had to go through the whole thing, we have to, basically get permitting for all the stuff that's already been done for the past 20 years? Are we doing the same thing now as far as that goes?
Just for the expansion.
We're just for the expansion now?
New roads cut, new
'Cause-
campsites cut.
Okay.
Those are already grown in.
Because we already did erosions, we already did cemetery plans, we got level spreader over there, that's all done. I didn't know if we had to go back and do all that stuff all over again.
It's new disturbance.
Okay, appreciate that.
I think primarily we talked about the old stuff just so we could clear it up on the record for the future, because there was
Yeah.
a lot of confusion
Yeah.
about like what was what.
Yeah, I was just bandwagon, yeah, I understand. Yep.
Okay, are there any other, do you see any other waivers that you're gonna need for anything? Is there anything? So, are we?
So what I will do is I will take the input that you decided tonight on how you're gonna look at it. I will revise the draft incomplete letter per these comments, and I'll circulate it to the board, give you an opportunity to comment, and then I'll forward it on to the applicant.
Okay. Yep.
Sounds good.
And so if you got it all done, we'll make a decision on site plan review. The site plan review is different than this. Step one is you're complete,
You still have to make a formal determination of completeness once you.
Yes,
Yeah, just wanted to point that out.
but if everything is, there's a possibility, we might be able to knock that out at our
Yep,
January.
and then you can move right on to the
Second one.
substantive review.
So any changes you made, please get them passed. The same thing, the chief, road commissioner, the various people that we've listed here. And we'll see you again on the 3rd of January. Any other questions for the applicants?
Should we make a formal motion to consider it incomplete? Do we have to do that
Oh.
tonight?
Yes, why don't
Okay,
you
take
do
it
that,
down.
subject to the drafting of the final document.
I would like to make a motion that we are finding the site plan review for 24 Leisure Lane at this time incomplete, pending waivers or submissions, as noted in the document notice of incomplete application prepared by George the Barge.
Second.
Any further discussion?
Did we alter anything that George sent us?
We did not.
No, I think tonight you've discussed changes to this, and I've taken notes on all of those individual items, some of which you're going to accept, and I'll just note that that's accepted for the conditional use.
Correct. So
That's,
we-
that's
yeah.
what I interpreted, yeah.
Okay, so want to make sure that, because nobody flies by their pants more than me. So are we clear on what we're voting on?
Sorry, so what are, the
So you
only
ma-
changes we made are we said for C3 and C5 that we are accepting the copies we had during the conditional use and all the other items. And
So for
we want
example, on the
waivers.
signage, you indicated you want to see that on the plan.
Correct.
That's what I'll put.
Yes.
For inland fisheries and wildlife, you've indicated you wanna see a letter.
Correct.
So, erosion and sedimentation, you said a waiver would be considered, the same thing on stormwater, landscaping. So all of those ones where you said the board, I'll just put in parentheses waiver. So that's what I'll do, and then I'll circulate that, you all get a chance to look at it. And, you, again, you cannot go around it among yourselves, but if you provide me with comments, I'll check those and then circulate the final draft to get it to them.
Yes. Everything to be addressed in some way as denoted by
As
our
discussed by the
discussion.
board.
Yes.
Yeah, and the only thing we have to do tonight is find it incomplete.
Correct.
So,
Right.
Stop yeah, stop there. We found it incomplete and you've got guidance on how to make it complete, in our opinion. Or try at least. And nothing we said tonight guarantees that we'll do it next time, but hopefully you've got a great amount of information on how to get there.
Yeah, all right, thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you for your patience.
We still have to vote on the
The
motion.
motion
Oh, yeah.
has not been
Oh.
amended or changed
It is
in any way
not.
or seconded or.
It has been
Um,
seconded.
yeah.
Okay.
So any further discussion? We've had some. Any other discussion that we need to have on this topic? Everybody understands what we're voting on?
We're voting on the
That
incomplete
is incomplete, okay.
application with our discussion incorporated.
Yeah, all in favor, please raise your hand, raise a hand. 4-0, thank you. Okay, we're officially done with them, right? Thank you for this one. Julian, if you would like to rejoin us. So, next topic is housing density. And so we got, I think, good input last couple weeks ago. And so we wanna, talk about where we are, that input. George, I think, has a couple of more questions from, someone who sent an email. Did you hand those out?
Not yet.
This part of our discussion.
Do you want me to just summarize what was in the packet on this, where we were?
Sure.
Yeah.
Okay, so, as I indicated in the notes, on November 15th, you had your public information meeting, and I prepared a memo that summarized the questions that were posed, because that was one of the issues that you asked for me to look at. And so the packet, I'll just quickly go through those for you if that would be helpful. And then at the end of the meeting, some board members indicated a potential interest and revisiting the lot size part of this. So you should.
We're discussing it.
You should make a decision on whether you want to
Excuse me.
go back to that or just continue with the proposal that you presented at the public meeting based on the input. If you do that, I'm prepared to present again what was done back in August where it had a little bit more complicated alternatives. So you should discuss how you want to proceed on that.
If we want to proceed on that.
Yep. And then I did, and Juliet, you mentioned the possibility of discussing again at some level tonight the issue of the mitigation or relief for property owners in the
Resource
RP
protection.
zoning. I did indicate that my understanding of the board decision was that you were not gonna pursue that in this round, so I did communicate that to the select board and the town manager. And so and I did indicate that, so the questions, based on the memo, page 35 of the packet, as I heard them, excuse me, the questions about how driveway and addressing would work, how, whether eligibility for non-conforming lots, if someone had a 1 acre lot, how would that be affected? Another question was the allowance for whether accessory apartments can be in subdivisions. And then finally, the fourth question, then there was the issue of, you received quite a bit of input on lot sizes. So, do you want me to just go through and summarize those answers, or are you pretty much all good with the memo and you processed it? And we can, I can just answer questions if you have any on those.
I'm good with the memo.
How about, maybe we discuss any items that we do wanna kind of rediscuss out of,
Sure.
you know?
Which would be
that-
moving on from the memo.
Yeah, like including the memo, but,
Okay.
you know,
Now we
is
do,
there anything that we do wanna discuss
is there,
further?
is the information that's provided, we'll discuss it. And then there's 3 more issues, George, is probably as good a time as any that were raised by someone outside of. and
Yeah, subsequent to the meeting, you
Subsequent-
received a memo.
Somebody sent me an email, basically.
Email.
And some of them were already, I think, covered in there. There were some ideas. I guess the one thing I'd like you to, in my mind, go over, make sure I'm understanding correctly, is the issue of condominiums. And we could take that as part of the discussion of individual items. So do we want to go over any individual parts of this versus how will driveways? Are we okay with the answer on addressing and driveways? Do we want to discuss that further?
Hold on 1 second. Sorry. Let me get to that. I think that's the first one, right?
Yes.
Does this answer the
It's
question?
on page 35 of the packet.
Okay.
Excuse me.
I guess the question is, do we think that the proposed ordinance answer, does it address these issues that were raised? And are we happy, with, do we want to make any changes after the issues were raised? Does that make sense? So as an example,
So it sounds like we have the driveway issue already addressed in our ordinance, right? Is that what I'm
Yes.
hearing?
Yes.
Yeah, right, so.
so the question is if we're happy that it is with that.
No, for example, right now, as I explained in the notes, if somebody's gonna do the 3 housing units, they're gonna have to have a common driveway, that's gonna have to meet the street classifications. So if you're sympathetic to the affordable housing issue, you might say, well, no, we don't wanna have to go through that process, let's just put in a driveway standard and not have to have it dedicated right away and everything in there. So you could, based on public input and your review of the ordinance provisions and requirements that I've provided, you could say, that's kind of somewhat defeating the purpose of 3 units. So let's consider a 16-foot driveway for those, and they can all be on the same driveway.
Right, because in our ordinance currently it says a driveway pretty much can serve no more than 2 dwellings, right? So if there's 3, then it would be considered a road
Yeah,
per
now
our
theoretically, if
ordinance.
they have the 3 units, they can put 2 on one driveway and 1 on the other.
You have two driveways.
Do not have to get a private road
But
approved.
how does the changes, how do they address
They don't
that?
address that issue. They do
Okay, so
not.
we need to
The
address.
ordinance addresses it. So the question is,
Are we okay
the
with?
summary that I've given you of what is gonna happen, because that's what people were just asking, what is gonna happen with driveways?
Right, right.
You got 3 houses on one lot, what's gonna happen with the driveways? This is how the ordinance is gonna, what the ordinance requirements are gonna be.
All right, well, I mean, let's discuss that. There's three dwellings. How do we feel about either allowing a driveway to serve 3 dwellings? Period, stop there. Like, how do we feel about that?
Well, I think the main requirement, when you get up to 3 dwellings, you're looking at multiple access by apparatus from the fire department, and you gotta be able to pass. That's why our roads are as big as they are, as wide as they are. And if you reduce that, then you have a potential of a safety problem.
Yep.
So I certainly would not recommend reducing it.
You would use the town standards as
The
it
ordinance.
exists today.
Yes,
it is.
that's correct, yes.
What do you guys think?
Safety is always an issue. But I think it, depends on the layout also. If you have 3 houses on one side or 2 houses on one house, site conditions could dictate a smaller
How
may
close-
benefit from having a smaller driveway size than a road, depending on where the houses are on the site.
I think so 3 houses, if 3 houses were served by 1 driveway, like what's the worry where too much traffic would be? So they each get, like, if it's a single, like, family complex, like, sure, it's fine, they can like work it out amongst themselves as a single driveway. If it's like the house dominium approach, then they need to have some sort of an HOA agreement which says how the driveway can be used already. So what is not allowing it to be smaller saving in this?
Well,
So
you-
it's only allowing 2 dwellings for a driveway,
Mhm.
period. So if there's 3, you need a road or another driveway.
So like from an ordinance perspective, what's the problem with reducing it? Like, it's not like it's a thoroughfare. Like, why do we need to follow the ordinance and make it a road, is what I'm saying?
Well, if you had mentioned that, okay, if you had 3 houses in there, usually it's a family situation. What happens if it is not a family? And initially it was a family situation, but you sold one of the lots,
Yeah.
now it's no longer a family situation.
Yeah.
But if you
mentioned
sell-
HOA, so.
And
HOA,
Are we
then,
talking about selling a lot or selling a house for the house dominium thing?
Either way.
Either
either way,
Oh, okay.
Could be just, there's a house with 2 apartments, And the other thing to think about is, could be 600 feet back from the road and a 12-foot driveway, and your point of, in a fire emergency, the fire trucks have to go back and forth to bring water. Can they get by each other, and, it's wooded site, and so somebody has to back all the way out to the main road. Those are the types of issues that,
How close can the driveways be?
50 feet.
50 feet. So I'm personally good with what the ordinance states, per what we just talked about, especially when potential selling of lots or dwellings or condominiums comes into play. Like, I think that makes sense.
Yeah, and recognize, I'm not weighing in one way or another at this point. When we do require roads, it adds to the cost, and there is a chipping away of the trying to make it, more affordable. And I'm not saying that, as we're going through this, we just gotta keep that in mind, that what are we doing to the ultimate goal of making housing more available? So, is there a consensus that we stick with, just use the ordinance for the road?
Seems like there are cases in which it could be made smaller, but given time and concern, I don't think it makes sense to go through the variations that would make sense to make it, the cases when you could make it smaller, so I think the ordinance
And
makes
just a
sense.
reminder, we've gone on that treadmill 3 times now and failed every time.
And my legs are getting tired.
Treadmill of like, let's not overcomplicate it.
It's just, the roads are just a thorn.
Yeah, they are, by limited time, but I guess it eventually, not just for this case, I'd really like to see a way where some kind of review could apply maybe common sense and say, you know, we're not going 600 feet back through a woods where they're really right on top of the Stackpole or whatever road it may be. But I think at this stage, we don't have that thing that says you can go to the codes enforcement person or you can come to the planning board and they can make an exception. Correct me if I'm wrong, there is no way to appeal the road standard. So it's either or here. So consensus, we don't make a change there? Or we don't add
Guess,
anything?
now that you've said that, we could have a line that's like defines an appeals process, but I don't know if we want to.
Well, that's probably another change to the ordinance.
Yeah, kind of like what we're
Oh,
doing.
no, that's what I'm saying, like, this would be part of the change to the
I guess
ordinance.
I'd like to see something where there was a site-specific, but it may be, but that, not tonight, not this year. Okay, so let's discuss that down the road.
I would
Yeah,
agree with
Then
that.
you get into people that wanna put in a subdivision, and I would like to make
Yeah.
an appeal. I don't wanna put in a road that wide.
Yeah, that's, I had three lot subdivision, why do I need to, why do I need a road? Because I'm no different than a house. So I guess the consensus is, I don't think we need a vote on that, George. I think we just leave it as is.
Yep.
Correct.
Yeah, unless you wanna do something, otherwise you don't think you need to make a decision on any
Okay.
of this. These are just answers to the questions that were raised.
No, I just want to, yeah, make sure.
Yep.
So if this becomes a contentious issue and it fails because people aren't happy with the driveway part, I just want to be sure that the public understands, again, you know, it's back to our previous conversations, that if this doesn't pass, because we're giving them option A and option B, right? So if it doesn't pass, then we're going with the state mandated.
Yep,
And the state's,
is silence on things.
The ordinance would apply.
the ordinance would apply either way.
Apply to you either way.
They still have the road.
So that's a really good point. Right?
Yep.
Yeah.
And it probably will be, it's been brought up every time, you know, this year, last year, what about roads? And they're good questions to ask now, so there's no surprise down the road, but I think at this point, we just say the ordinance applies.
And we could, on the website, post the answers to these questions that were raised at the public meeting, so that'll be helpful.
I think that would be good to show that we paid attention, we heard them, and
Yep.
we got answers, and we did what we did, or doing. Okay, so that covers, either number of driveways, construction of driveways and addresses, that's all.
Sorry, one question on addresses. Maybe I just missed it. So I understand the three, if there's 3 units, what happens with addressing, but what if there's 2 units? I'm sure it's in there, I just,
So if there's 2 units, it'd be A and B,
okay.
if there's one driveway, if there's one driveway.
There's 2. If there's 3 on one driveway, they have to have 3
Then it's gotta
mailboxes at the
be-
road.
Well, then it's gotta be a private way, basically what most towns call it, with a dedicated right of way, with a maintenance agreement, and then each of the units, you know, on that get a street address based on that new street road.
And for a whole bunch of reasons,
Oh, it was the last bullet.
now better with the road, because I think if we, a whole bunch of reasons that could come up. So are we good on those answers, sticking with the answers George provided? Can individual dwelling units be sold separately, and how will they be taxed?
And I did include an MMA opinion, they can be
So
sold.
I think in general, if we could sum it up by saying yes.
Yeah, there's no, you cannot
Right?
restrict.
Yes to all of
You
those.
cannot
That's right.
restrict the sale of these lots if they are sold with just one lot. If they're not, if there's, and this goes to the Jill Kessing way, you know, they have to have 300 feet of frontage to create separate lots for each lot. So, If they do that, then obviously there's no question they meet the zoning. If they do it within the same lot, then they can sell each individual unit as a condominium. Their ownership ends at the walls, like a typical condo, and then the lot is owned in common by all three. And that's just governed under Maine's condominium laws. And there's nothing that the town can do to say you cannot do that, according to them.
And this is what I think the devil is gonna be in the details. And
Mhm.
this is where, you know, the great loophole finders of the world will, but I don't know how to address it, every potential question.
And Jill, I think she brought it up. So what is she saying though here? She's saying that if the lots were smaller, then it would prevent the split somehow?
Yeah, what she's saying is on the duplexes, we go 2, 4, 6
Mhm.
for the 3 units. So if you went 2, I don't know what she's got,
But I
one and
think
a,
part of the confusion there, she's assuming that I said at the meeting, which I didn't, that the 300 feet will no longer, frontage will no longer be there. It will be,
Yeah,
but that is not something that you can change. You cannot require more frontage. You can require more lot area, but you
Right.
cannot require 600 feet or 900 feet of frontage
Right.
if they do 3 houses.
Right.
If you did, then they would do the separate individual lots, each with their 300 feet of frontage. The idea of this is you don't require that, and the state says you cannot require that. So that's the answer to her first question is no. And then I think her second one about the reducing lot sizes and everything is under the assumption that the 300 feet frontage no longer applies,
okay,
okay? So it does still apply.
yeah.
And they cannot split up this land 6 acres unless they have 300 feet of road frontage.
well, and that's part of it, but what I think she's also saying
Mhm.
is that if you go 2, 4, 6, and you're on 900 feet of frontage,
Mhm.
you could, it could
Split
be
those.
divided up. What she's saying is if you went 2, 1.5, 1.5, you couldn't, because each lot is not 2 acres.
That's correct.
Oh, I see what she's saying. So still require 2 acres for a lot.
That's right.
Right, but in the, this plan, we could say you could only, like, 1.5. Does that make sense?
Yeah, see, and a lot of what happens on these things, because we've had people come in wanting to do this, and they don't wanna build a road. So they say, we've got a family and we'd like to put 3 houses on the same lot. We're just gonna have individual driveways, and that's been done in various places. But they have to create separate lots now, which requires a road. Under the main law, they will be allowed to do those 3 houses on the same lot, but they will not be able to sell individual lots with those houses.
Yeah.
Unless they do the road.
Right. But I see what she's saying. Do you guys see what she's saying now?
Mm.
Like that kind of,
Yeah, what she's saying is you've got the 300-foot frontage is one potential block for sale. But if you made them 2 plus 1.5 plus 1.5, you couldn't split and sell 1.5 and 1.5, because they're not 2. Let's just say you had 900 feet of frontage in there. Is that the case? Can we require a lesser, for the additional units, can we?
You cannot reduce the road frontage. I mean, you
No, not
could,
road frontage, I'm talking about lot acreage.
yeah, you can, if you wanna
Just
revisit,
original
if
is
you wanna
2,
revisit the lot
and
size
then we-
issue, then certainly we can discuss smaller lots.
We just can't make, the first one's 2, and then every additional one is 4, cause it
Can't be bigger.
can't be bigger.
But it could be smaller. Okay, that's what I thought. So that is a potential question, but I don't know that suddenly you go to 1.5. I guess if they had 900 linear feet, they could do it, because it's 300, and they had 3 different driveways and a whole bunch of other stuff. I don't see this as, in my opinion, I don't see a big, it's another block of selling them, but what's the difference? I mean, I guess, you see what I'm saying? If it's a rental.
I'm lost there.
Yeah, well, if it's a rental, or, I'm lost my own mind, if it's a rental or a sale, why are we concerned about a sale versus, there's still
Because
like
they can-
family living in there.
Well, no, if you sell it, who knows who's gonna,
Well, it doesn't have to be a family, I'm sorry, back up,
um,
it could be
Okay, that's actually another
I
good,
guess
well,
my interpretation of her is to facilitate the sale of, individual sale of these and do it as separate lots. So that's not really what we're talking about.
she's saying the opposite, she's saying a way to
Block it.
prevent sale of small lots, I think is what she's,
Like, work in the spirit of the law, but, or what she considers the spirit of the law.
which is to allow, affordable housing.
So the proposal that you presented is 2 acres, you can do a single family with 2 accessory apartments, full-size units, 2 acres per dwelling unit. With 300 feet of frontage, you're gonna need 6 acres. If they wanna sell individual units on that, they have to do a condominium or create a road with 300 feet of frontage for each of the 2 acre lots.
But what she said, if you did all of that, you could, what she said, okay, you had 900 feet, you had individual drives, whatever it may be, but you could still sell it, there would be you could create a lot and sell it at 1.5 acres.
Right, she's saying reduce the lot sizes, I guess. And
I
that's
think we did,
something the
yeah.
board needs to discuss,
Yeah,
because that's what
I think
her,
we're driving, I don't see, you sell it at 2, you can sell it at 1.75, what's the difference? If they've already got the road frontage and all that other stuff, I think these are the, that's my thought.
But if you have one lot, let's say we allow 2 separate single-family homes on 3 acres instead of 4. Because right now we're saying you can have 2 dwelling units on 4 acres because you need 2 for the first and 2 for the second.
right.
But instead, we said we only need 1 for the second and 1 for the third, so on a 3 acre lot, you could have a single-family home and another single-family home. And then if you wanted to split the lots apart to sell both of them off, you couldn't do that because our minimum lot size is 2 acres. That's, no? Did
Yeah,
I
I
just
think that's
repeat a
what
bunch
she's
of
saying,
people?
is that
Oh,
you,
okay.
yeah, a way to block splitting is, but she's also saying that what, I forget the guy's name, what he was trying to get to, in the spirit of the law, get as many, reduce the acreage as much as you can to get those units on. And I think that the way we've been going is 2, 2, and 2. And quite truthfully, if you're worried about selling it, I don't see that as the biggest issue out there.
Agreed.
One issue that Devin has is when you keep moving away from the mic.
Sorry. Sorry there, Devin.
That was, I really did not.
After I told everybody he's talking about,
We should have little
he told me my
lapels.
voice projects. He was kissing up to me. Anyway, do we wanna change it to something different?
I don't know what we would change, like, I don't know.
I think that, to me, the big lot size change comes back to the duplex part. Is like, which I know we talked about and went back to 2, 4, 6, much simpler. But if we want to go, instead of 2.5, we go down to 2 acres for a duplex, I think that bears revisiting. So as in, if you have 2 attached dwellings,
No, I got you.
okay.
Which is part of this question, I guess, right? Is this as good? Well, what do we wanna do? Cause let's finish these questions and then
Okay.
get to the duplex, I think is the question about others raised, they wanted to go back and talk about something else. So are we good with? I guess, are we good? Is this the time to talk about duplexes?
Just, again, if you're good with all the answers on the rest of it, for accessory apartments and subdivisions, that was another question that came up. And I gave her an explanation of that. And then similarly for the idea of what about non-conforming lots, and I gave an answer to that, so.
The only comment I had on a subdivision is a cluster subdivision that is a 1 acre lot. They could, unless the covenants say no, the covenants don't speak to that issue, which they may not, because it's new. If the covenants don't say anything or restrict it, somebody could put an apartment on a 1 acre lot.
Again, there's probably 2 different legal potential approaches to that. One would say, look, They told the planning board these were all gonna be single-family homes, didn't mention anything about doubling the amount of traffic and other impacts, so therefore, if they wanna do that, they'd have to go back for an amendment. Two different lawyers might give you two different answers on that.
Yeah, I'm not sure that's a safe to bet on, you know, I don't think we ironclad said you can not do an apartment in these.
Well, sometimes you review the draft bylaws and covenants, and they say single-family only, so.
Well, if it's in there, then the covenants speak to it.
Yeah.
But if the covenant, I guess my point is if the covenants don't speak to it in any way, shape, or form, they could put an apartment.
Potentially.
And if the subdivision didn't want it in there, the best
Yeah.
thing for them to do is amend their covenants to say no
Mm.
accessory units.
And the new law expressly says this does not trump private covenants.
That was the answer, okay.
Yep.
Provisions, I guess, so that's that, is there any more,
No, that was it for the question.
are we good on provisions for multiple dwelling units to apply to non-conforming lots? That answer? There's nothing we need to do to change on.
Oh, there was actually, on accessory apartments, there is a needed change, I'm sorry, on non-conforming lots, there is a needed change. And that, in your packet, there is, let's see what page it is.
Section 16.3,
Yeah,
page 37.
16.3, as I looked at that, I did see that right now, it says, basically area. So it could be confusing in terms of, this now requires 2 acres per dwelling unit, but that's area. This ordinance says they can be grandfathered for that, so.
I'm good with George's
The,
change.
the intent of the ordinance is to say, look, if you get a 1 acre lot, you can put a single family, on it, you can put an accessory apartment on it, you can't put 3 houses on it. And you're not grandfathered from the new law requirements, so that just clarifies that.
Mhm.
I changed the terminology to minimum lot size,
Mhm.
Yep.
Okay.
so I've added that to the packet.
So is that it? Because I really want to talk more about what we were just talking about, the lot sizes.
So if you wanna go back there, I'll bring up what
I just,
we had in August. Okay, so here is, okay, so there is the planning board proposal that you presented at the public meeting. The comprehensive plan on the left and the simplified, LD 2003 requirements on the right. I didn't put in the illustration for 4 acres, this is the maximum with 3, okay? So back in, August, so this is LD requirements if the town takes no action, then they'll be able to do it on 2 acres and 2.5 acres. And then, back in August, you were talking about having a special treatment for duplexes. And the comprehensive plan talked about reducing the lot size from 2.5 acres down to 2 acres. So you could either do, the proposal that you had back in August was either do a single family with 2 accessory apartments or a duplex with 1 accessory apartment. And we had the language in there to show that and allow that. And then you had the LD proposal, LD 2003 on the right with the 4 acre version and the 6 acre version. So it would go from basically 2 variations to 3. If you put in a special dispensation for duplexes. And argument for it is that's the way it's always been, although it did require a larger lot size, it was only half an acre, so that argues for it. Argue against it is that was before LD 2003. And now the town is looking at the comprehensive plan to protect neighborhood and rural character with the apartments that we've talked about and the full-size units, which look like multiple houses, then that would be requiring a larger lot size. So you went through that whole process and discussion. So the question is, as a result of the public input on November 15th, do you want to go back and reconsider going back to the August proposal?
What I heard was, obviously, one person spoke in favor of, not increasing the lot size for duplexes. Several other people, there were only 10 people, so it's hard to, but also the survey from a year ago and so on and so forth, was to in fact not to control, I won't say limit or eliminate, but to control growth or housing units. And so, and a couple of people really didn't speak either way at that meeting, quite truthfully. So it was sort of like a wash, like it was last year in the survey in some ways. So I didn't come out of there with any strong, if there was a leaning, it was leaning towards more land per unit, larger acreage per unit.
I
As
felt like the
min-
meeting.
Minimal as the grouping was, but
The meeting
that's my.
did have the same feeling as our survey, as it was a small subsection. There just happened to be one very loud opinion, and
And there's people that, I mean, I suspect that person is not the Lone Ranger, there were other, you know, there
Oh, no,
were
certainly not, yeah.
48% of the people that, you know, favored, more houses, well, higher density, so on the survey, so. I guess your thoughts.
you seem to feel strongly.
The idea on the affordable housing is what? Is that these houses, these dwellings are gonna be rented out? Right? Is that the idea?
Well, whether they're rented or they're sold, one of the factors that drives up the price of housing in Maine is the land requirements. Because there's not a lot of land available. And so if you require larger lot sizes, that increases the cost of housing. So that's where the state legislature saw that this is one way to address the housing crisis, is to stop towns from requiring, you know, all of these lots and roads and everything else that has to go into it, let people put multiple housing units on the same lot. And historically, they've been doing that with accessory apartments, or what they call accessory dwelling units. You know, you just put another unit right on the, either attached to, or a tiny home out back. And now they're going a step further to say, let's just allow 2 or 3 housing units on an individual lot without any, they're saying you don't have to increase lot sizes, but they're allowing towns. And I think that particularly if you think about some of the more dense communities, urban site type situations, you put 2 or 3 houses on the same lot, when you got 10,000 square foot lots, that's gonna be an issue for the urban communities, not so much for the rural.
And so if we think that they split these lots, sell them, are the prices of those houses and lots going to be
Well, if they,
cheaper than?
let's just say that you're not increasing lot sizes. Let's just say you had, back to the August proposal, is that what it is? Just go with LD 2003. So, if they were to sell the 2.5 acre lot with a duplex and a single family and condominiumize that, okay? So now each of the 3 unit owners only has to buy 2 acres of land, or 1/3 of that. As opposed to buying 2 acres of land, they can have a condominium, they can share the costs of the driveway plowing, the mowing, all of the maintenance costs can be shared among the 3, so there are cost savings to it. But the main thing is the land.
Yeah, and it's not just, I think price is a part of it, but it's just cram as many, that's the wrong term. Let's see how many houses we can get into the existing land, you know, let's try to get, you know, and that's, you know, there's a whole school of development that is, don't go with big lots, go with as small a lots as you can. You know, getting some new urbanist things where there's maybe 15 feet between houses. What we try to do, and it's tough, is maintain the rural character, right? Lots of open space. Our comp plan also talks about diversity in housing, too, you know, we're talking duplexes, triplexes, quadplexes in the comprehensive plan. So those 2 things are not necessarily compatible. So I guess the question is, what do we wanna do on duplexes?
I think, yeah, getting into the law's intent is kind of impossible, because then we'd have to, I don't know, get into what supply and demand economics too much.
Exactly, I mean, that's ridiculous.
Yeah.
You don't lose money in real estate, you just don't.
Right.
Not here, you're not going to.
Right, yeah, that's.
2007, 2008 maybe, but,
Well, yeah, I mean, but that's,
Yes.
yeah, the challenge is, and it's important to maintain the rural character, and, at the same token, you know, we do have, or a gentleman, I got a call from the codes guy today, I think he talked to George as well, but in my age or older with a 40-year-old son who, is concerned, you know, if you read the ordinance now, he can't do like a two-house deal. Now, April, if it passes April, whatever it is, he can, and if it doesn't pass July 1st, he can. So that was the intent, was that guy couldn't do what he wants to do in Durham today. Maybe if you read it, depending upon how you looked at the ordinance, but maybe you could. But that's what it's really trying to do, is help those people who wanna have, either for their, you know, there's some who wanna do it for their kids, or their grandparents, or their family. There's some, and, you know, God bless them, who wanna make money on the deal. You know, there's nothing wrong with that. I mean, if they've got the space and they wanna, you know, do that and rent it out, then the whole travel nurse, business is he, you know, is the campground guy I talked to, that's where a lot of his business is going.
To go back to duplexes, the reason I'm still not really sure where I lie, but at least they're in, cause duplex by definition are two attached single-family dwellings.
Yes.
Is that right?
Yes.
Sorry, okay. For non-legal
Equal-
summary,
They have equal floor area.
okay,
And they're attached.
and they're attached.
So they're not a single family.
Okay,
They were two
equal,
family.
okay. Equal floor area dwellings that are attached.
Yep.
So, because I think a lot of our worry is you have, you know, basically 3 dwelling units that the lots get sold off, and then those all can get 3 dwelling units on them eventually, and then you have growth of density. But at least like the duplex can never, I assume you can never divide a lot line right down the middle of a duplex to
You do,
then.
that's what the condominium does that, basically.
Right, but you can't split the lot, so you can never just subdivide
Oh,
the
'cause it's
lot between,
together.
because
They
they're
would not
together
meet
into one.
setbacks, they would not meet setbacks,
Right.
so
Yeah.
you couldn't do it here.
But the
Some
condominium,
communities have 0 lot line,
Oh, okay.
where you can do that, like townhouses and that
Oh,
kind of stuff.
yeah,
townhouses.
and that's the devil in the details.
yeah.
Because down the
Which-
road, somebody's able to figure out that,
Right,
well,
which we
the
can't.
condo is this box with these 2 houses in it, and everybody owns all the land in common, so I'll go get the common to sell me more land. That's gonna be a challenge, you know, if it's on whatever number of acres that it is.
Right, so but since you can always sell parcels of your land to get redeveloped, but the actual, those 2 equal floor area buildings could never become their own independent entities, which could then get more houses put on them.
Yeah, the duplex could never be split.
Right.
Right.
Which is why maybe there is a reason to have special dispensation back in, similar to what we were talking about in August. It's my only reason why I would consider it separately,
I'm
even
not
though I
su-
think it complicates everything.
I'm not sure you couldn't. I'm really not sure you couldn't sell off the land, if all the other factors are met, setback, if it's a big lot, you got a duplex, and you split it down the middle, and so, and you have maybe, you almost have to have a condo, because you've got somebody's gotta take care of that common wall. But you could you take that line and extend it out past the walls.
Well, you have to
Yeah, you
meet
don't have the
setback.
setback.
There's no setback
Yeah,
from the
those
property line.
units would not meet the setbacks, the individual units.
So unless we change our setback.
I gotcha.
Sorry, Chuck.
No, you're,
Which we would.
But you could sell it on the but you could keep the condo and
the
sell
condo
the
part.
excess land. So,
Correct, but you can
yes.
always do that.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, so it's really the same proposal, it's just the, eliminate requiring the 2 acres per dwelling unit with duplexes. Anything more than that, then you gotta add the 2 acres. That's what we had back in August.
So you would have a duplex now on 2.5 acres, that by our current ordinance.
Yep. And under the comprehensive plan, not considering impacts on rural character
They
and,
wanted to go to two.
and the new LD 2003. It said, you know, what's the point of having an extra half acre with a duplex? Just put it 2 acres.
Yeah.
Where would you put I get that, and so where would you put, you have 2.5 acres duplex. How do you take care of that, accessory unit? If you went with that, you'd have 2.5 acres. Are you saying we go back to putting an accessory unit on the 2.5 acres?
That's what we were doing in August. You could have a total of 3 units under any of these scenarios. And if it's a single family with 2 accessory apartments, it has 2 acres. If it's a duplex with 1 accessory apartment, it has 2 acres. If it's full-size units and you have 3, you have to have 6 acres.
My thought is.
I'm sorry, 4 acres. You would not require I don't think you'd require the 2 acres for that third variation.
So.
Anything more than a duplex, you go to the bigger lot size.
So my feeling is we spent a lot of time doing that, we've talked about it, not a lot of impact, but the feedback has been more rural character, bigger lots than it has been, shrink the size and put another one in there is what I've heard, but again, it's like 49-51 or, 2 versus 4 that spoke at the last meeting, so it's not a overwhelming support one way or this thoughts.
Does anyone feel strongly that we should keep it the way it is, which is the 246, or go back to August with the duplex modification?
I don't see any reason to change it.
To change it back to August?
Right. Yeah, I think George has addressed all the comments that were brought up that are either in our ordinance or covered somewhere else. I'm gonna sidetrack a little bit. Somebody brought up PUDs during that meeting. So how does that?
I explained, that was Todd Bollier, he raised the question of, why not just do PUDs? Well, you're already doing PUDs.
What's a PUD again, sorry?
A planned unit development,
Oh.
and just understand, that's typically like if you go to Arizona and you see this housing project that has a convenience store and a daycare, and they just pack in the houses, that's a planned unit development. And so they don't do it by zoning, they just do it by a master plan. That's a plan, that's what the original
It's
planned
generally
unit
zoning
development was.
classification.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's sort of plan, but in Maine, when they started doing cluster subdivisions, reducing the size of the lots, a lot of towns call them PUDs.
But it's really a cluster development, is what.
Yeah,
And
really, what
PUD
you're doing
is-
is clusters, you're already doing that.
The big PUDs might have apartment complexes, it would have,
Yeah.
seniors, it would have,
Shopping.
a big house, it'd
it'll
have shopping,
yeah.
it'd have, live, work, play kind of
Yeah.
stuff. Let's not go down that road
But
tonight.
again, that's just,
I
it's
didn't- I
getting,
didn't-
it's
it was-
getting
Let's get
back,
brought up.
it's getting back to
Just-
the issue of smaller lot sizes,
Yeah.
if you wanna go in that direction.
Which is kind of the trend outside of Durham, so I guess I'm kind of looking for a consensus. If we
I
want
agree too. Let's just keep it how it is.
that one and going clockwise.
I agree. We talk about maintaining rural character, and I don't think we maintain that by urbanizing everything.
Okay, so just to make sure I don't get criticized for misrepresenting what the board is deciding tonight, it would be good to make a motion, clearly expressing that you have reviewed the public input, and whatever you decide, then vote on that, and then that'll be the official decision of the board tonight.
So the only change, if I understand that we've made tonight, is on, is the one you talked about.
Non-conforming uses.
Non-conforming uses. Everything else, so the motion would hopefully bear with great clarity, lay that out.
Let's get some text to this.
Basically move forward with the proposal.
With the one only change being,
Add a
16.3.
clause that clarifies non-conforming lots.
And that's per your write-up on page 37?
Section 16.3, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
Put my glasses on, I can read that. There we
I would make a motion that the planning board votes, or the planning board supports the LD 2003 implementation as presented on November 15th with the modification outlined under question 4 in our agenda packet. Will the provision for multiple dwelling units apply to non-conforming lots? As the only change to that presented proposal.
Second.
It's been moved, seconded. Do I have, or do we have further discussion?
Do you wanna get on the treadmill again?
No.
Sure. Please raise your hand if you agree. 5-0 this time.
So that was Tyler, moved, and who seconded?
Alan?
And so, the next step with this then is to, I don't think we need to have another information meeting, because nothing's changed from, I think that's a minor change.
Clarification.
Yeah, so I don't think we need to have another public information meeting on this one. So sometime after the first of the year, as soon as they're before, submit it to the select
Well, I
board.
think what's gonna happen now is you're gonna get whatever the Conservation Commission proposes on the solar. And so you can now spend your time on the January meeting reviewing that and deciding, you know, is that okay? Do you wanna
I'm
make
talking about this
changes to it?
particular,
But what I'm saying is this one I think is now ready to roll.
yes, that's what I'm saying, this is ready to go.
I'm
Yeah, this,
sorry.
that's, is getting ready to go, this,
Yep.
this can go to the selectmen anytime, or you
Do
want?
you wanna do that, or do you wanna wait and get the?
Actually, is there any harm in doing it early? Like, why wait, right? Like,
I think it's, I'm ready to send it, I mean, in my opinion, I think we've rolled on this one for a while, so
Right.
George's convenience to,
So all the language is right what's in your packet with that additional one?
yeah.
Okay.
George, you had mentioned, putting some of these answers on the website.
yes.
Yep.
Did we, I guess, thank you, but did we answer, cause she was kind enough to send it to me, the four, I guess it's 4 questions from Ms. Gastingay?
We talked about the top two. Would the proposed changes remove the 50% max size of the initial dwelling?
I don't think so.
Well, that's, yeah, I mean, we're still doing that, except, but it's accessory apartments.
So the answer is no, it does not change,
Change that.
remove the.
Nope.
And then if the proposal, which is our recommendation, and then with the option at the bottom of the page 2 be approved, I don't,
What is
again,
that?
that's
That's
question
the
4.
state, if your proposal fails at town meeting, then the state law goes into
Yes.
effect on July 1st, 2023.
But there's not
But
an
the
approval,
voters are not approving that.
it goes into
Right,
effect.
right. Yep.
So the only warrant article will be your proposal.
Yep.
Yep.
Can I ask a hypothetical?
Yes,
So, if
this is the discussion after we've had our motion, but yes.
Oh.
That's right,
maybe we should
that's
vote
okay,
first.
it's,
Okay.
it's open for discussion.
Okay, so if our proposal is rejected, would we later just add into our ordinance our best
Probably the
description?
next town meeting.
Next town
we do
meeting.
that. Just say,
Okay.
look,
Just
that's what the state law requires, that's what, where our ordinance doesn't align with it, so we have changes.
Cut and paste.
That's all.
Or we could, we could, I guess, we could do it in a regular election, but yes, probably wait another year, but it's in effect, and George changed it from red to black, Brent.
I know, I noticed that.
So, thank you.
And that was
Okay.
fair,
I
that
never-
was a fair criticism.
It was, but I never knew that there was a survey out there that swayed people. Whether there actually is, I haven't done my verify on this.
We'll just move on to, I think I've got a motion, a second, and I need people to raise their hands if that's what we want to do. We have not yet voted. So, we are voting
We already
to.
did.
You already voted to-
Oh.
Yeah.
I have nothing.
Well, before, I wasn't.
talking about it.
Still
Tyler's gonna get
Hey,
some calories.
just remember,
I said we were off that treadmill.
elections,
Let's repeat that motion.
that was hypothetical.
yes.
You're all still on the mic.
All right, so it was hypothetical. All right, so just remember, election's January 3rd. Am I too senile to be president? So, anyway, before we go down that, Juliet wanted to discuss something, so.
Yeah, the
Please.
resource protection, but honestly, yeah, we don't really have to get into it tonight if we don't want to. It's definitely off the table for this year, right? But I think we should start thinking about what to do for next year. But we've got a lot of time, so, you know, we don't really need to get into it tonight.
What is it that you want? to
So,
do?
so I do, you know, we should, I think we all agree that we should be providing some sort of like support, mitigation, help to people that were negatively impacted, certain people, by our relatively recent resource protection, ordinance change, right? Those people that their current, houses and driveways are now in resource protection. But what George had proposed to us last time was not down, right? We didn't agree with that process there, but I do think we should continue to talk about what we could do. So
Well, I
that was
think-
all, that was
Yeah,
just generally
and I think-
talking about it.
Part of it was, the original thought was to have us do the Board of Zoning Appeals approvals, which we decided was questionable whether that was legal to do.
Is that a conflict?
Right, I think, yeah, we were gonna look more into that, you know, and I had an idea of, I mean, we've got some people, especially in the CONSCOM, that understand wetlands, and I don't know if it would be something that we could, you know, they might be interested in offering their service to some people to go out there and look at their lot and, you know,
I think,
present their findings.
I mean, that was a concern addressed in the residents' comment was, how do we define
Right.
that?
Right.
And so, I certainly would like to, those people who woke up on the first Sunday in April and found out they were in resource protection, can we help them out somehow? I think the formal process is still gonna be, unfortunately, go through the BZA, you know, so. And they're not, it's not like they're in they have to meet, like that's it may not be the easiest process, but I know George, correct me if I'm wrong, you're getting lots of, you and this codes guy are getting lots of inquiries about what can I do, and I don't think we should have been surprised.
But maybe you know, we pick this back up after the solar thing is through, possibly,
Well,
February or March.
we're gonna have, just very quickly, because there is a budget request going forward from the town for something called codification of the land use ordinance. If you're familiar with that, and a quick overview. So that will then show us put it all in, hopefully in 20 or 30 pages of what needs to be fixed. But then we would prioritize what next, so that alleviation of that issue, certainly worth in discussing with so I guess my point is, we're gonna have to go through this process again, next year with some things. My comment to the town budget committee and others is, let's set reasonable expectations for what's gonna get accomplished. You're gonna get a list of literally probably 20 pages of things that should be, some of them will be easy. Does violate state law, here's what it should say, that may be easy. Backlots, private roads, they're not gonna get any easier because we went to codification, so. And all they're gonna get is that list, so that's my comment there.
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
I'll second.
I'll accept, we're only gonna vote once. We have a motion, a second, any discussion, no vote, we're out of here. Thank you all.
Thank you, George.
Thank you all.
Oh, wait.
Thank all of you. And I guess you're welcome to come tomorrow if you have the opportunity. It will be broadcast sometime Friday morning, afternoon, over the weekend if you're bored.
I'll be out of town, but I will watch the video.
It is a whole lot more fun to watch the video.
Cause you can fast forward through it.
Exactly.
You
I
can't
can-
hear half
this
the
is-
people.